We galts were so thick on the land around Saget, folk said if you went for a walk at night and you trod on something and it gave a squiggle, it was 10 to 1 you would find it a galt. They farmed here and they farmed there, brothers and cousins and half-brothers and uncles. But the best of the bunch was my father, Rob Galt, lightsome and hearty, not mean like the rest. He'd worked for nearly 25 years as his father's foreman up at Drumbogs. Old Galt seemed nearly immortal. The older he grew, the coarser he was. Father stuck the brute as a good son should, though he aye wanted land of his own.
I said you can keep Drumbogs.
Which ought you say?
I keep it. And all the things that are in it. I'll soon get a place of my own, old man.
You?
I mean, a place of my own and parks that are mine.
Father didn't look long for a farm of his own. Petals, by Saget, he leased in a wink, and we moved in the autumn term. Folk watched the flitting come down by Mundine and turn at the corner and trudge up the brae to the big house poised on the edge of the hill.
Stand.
His name's Rob Galt. He's leased Petals up on the edge of the mount.
He'll have gotten a place at a low rent with its coarse red clay. Looks it fair sucks at your feet as you pass through the parks. Of course, the Galts make siller like dirt wherever they sit, but there's hardly a place to sit in long. Work the land to death in the space of their lease and sign flit to the other side of the howe, leaving the land dry as a rat-sucked swede. There's fair a lot of Galts about.
Oh, aye, if you're a newcomer up in the howe and you stop at a man and asked him the way, chances are he'd be in of the brood.
And like as not afore he'd finished with you, just sold your horse or else stolen your watch.
Aye.
Found out everything he'd ever done. Recognised your mother and had doots about your father.
Aye, likely.
She seems quiet enough, buddy. Almost like gentry. Faith, that's funny. A Galt wedded decent.
Oh, he's fair fond of the creature.
Aye, and you see, that's queer in a man with a wife that's managed to bring but one bairn into the world.
Rachel, she's called. She's aye trotting behind him like a collie dog. And he spoils them both, the wife and the quine. You'd think them sugar he was feared would melt.
Aye, Father spoiled us both, but we'd hardly sat down a week in Petals when I saw a queer like change.
Run to the house, see if your mother will let you come out. With 2 loads of turnip to pull afford dinner.
Aye, Father. And I'd go blithe to the shed for my trailer and his. And out we waded through the cling of the clay and pulled side by side down the long Swede rows, the rain in a drifting seep from the hills. Below us, the howe in its garment of mist.
Whatever in the world's happened to you, Rob Galt? She's fair soaked. The quine will have her difficult.
Oh, it's lassie. She'll take no harm from the rain. They must clear the Swedes from the land. A good 3 weeks behind my work.
Best of the Galts. And God keep off the rest.
As that year wore on to its winter, while he'd rise at 5 as most other folk did, he wouldn't be into his bed till near morning. It was chav, 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 till at last you would think he'd turn himself into an earthworm near. In the blink of the light from the lanterns of dawn, he would snap, short-tempered at Mother. She would stare and wonder and give a bit laugh. And he'd eat his porridge as though he was feared he would lose his appetite halfway through. And he'd muck out the byre and stable as fast as though he were paid for the job by the hour, with a scowl of ill nature behind his long nose. And then, while the dark still lay on the land, he'd harness the horses and lead out the first, its hooves striking fire from the stones of the close, and cry to the second, and it would come after. And the two would drink at the trough, while Father would button up his collar against the sharp drive of the frozen dew as the north wind woke. sign as the light came grey in a tide, wan and slow from the bervy breeze, and the peasies waken and cry and weep. Father would jump from the back of Jim and back the pair up against the plough and unloose the chains from the britchins.
So you're off.
And I minded how he once would stop and would joke and tease me for the lads I had at school. He'd the place all ploughed ere December. Then he began the daftest like ploy. Between the hill of Patols and the house, a stretch of moor thrust a thin tongue, 3 or 4 acre, deep pitted with holes, and as rank with whins as a haddock with scales. Father set in to break up the land. He carted great stones to fill up the holes, and would lever out roots when he could with a pick. When he couldn't, he'd bring out his horses and yoke them, and tear them out from the ground that way.
Trying to break in that bit moor. I was saying to Mrs. Murdoch, there's not been a tenant yet that's farmed Patols. I haven't had the sense to leave it be.
Maybe that land fair cries to have a man at it.
You've been working at it all the spring. You're fair behind because of it.
I'll have it broken by April's end. I'm wondering, though, how I should drain it. And what's the best kind of turnips to plant in the clay? It's hard to say what kind of manure would bring the best yield in a dry year. Some parks are like women. You have to prig and part them afore they'll come on. Sly and slick it. You can feel it as soon as you start on it. She'll take corn with a muckle husk, but not the little. I'll kettle her up with some phosphate, I think.
Aye, well, is that so? What do you think of this business of tariffs?
Oh, I couldn't just say, man. What bothers me is that park will I put in the tears.
And what could you think of a fool like that, folk asked. Though he'd fallen behind with his chav on the moor, he soon made it up with his working at night. He fair had a fine bit crop the next year. Mother and me both out at the cutting, binding and stooking as he reapered the fields.
Rob Galt's lass's fella shot up all of a sudden.
Oh, aye, she has that, Mr. Smingers. See her gone past the school quite often. Oh, fun to be bonny. I like a lass with a good bit of beef. Though it's said the Queen's a fair bit scholar.
Oh, I so I've heard. Nae better than my ain Johnny, mine. Teachers are coarse to my Johnny. Thanks.
Now eat your supper, Rachel. I'll ask your father when he comes in.
When Father had finished his plightering outside, he sat in the kitchen, puffing at his pipe, his eyes on the window, watching the lie rise up outside and peer in the house as though looking for him.
And, how was the mart today, Rob?
Oh, fine, fine. Sold a corn for a fair bit price.
Oh, that's good. The Dominie was speaking to Rachel at school today. He sent her home with a message.
Oh, aye.
He thinks she should go to college.
He said maybe I could win a bursary or something to help.
Well, Rob, what do you say to that?
To what?
About sending Rachel to college.
What? Money for school? Where do you think I'll manage to get that?
Out of the corn you've just sold.
I've my seed to get and my drains to dig. And what about the lie for next year's corn?
Rob, there's other things besides your park.
Damned, it's crying out loud for manure. Hardly have a penny piece over. Tails you.
Hail, sir. You would greet yourself if you saw your life ruined.
Well, I'm right sorry you're taking it like that. But, losh, that's a small thing to greet over. Come out. We'll go for a walk around the parks.
I'd gone with him, half hoping he thought to change his mind on this business of college. But all that he did on the walk was to stand now and then and stare at the flow of the stubble, or laugh, queer-like, as we came to a patch where the grass was bare and the crop had failed.
See that, Rachel? The wretch wouldn't take. She'll want to deep drill this park next season.
He picked up a handful of earth and trickled the stuff through his fingers, slow, then dusted it back on the park, careful, as though it were gold dust, not dirt.
Quine, I've got you in fettle at last.
He was speaking to the park, not his daughter. But I hated Petolds from that moment. I thought, quiet, watching my father and thinking how much he'd changed since he first set foot on its clay. He worked from dawn until dark, and still later he hove great harvests out of the land. He was as mean as dirt with the siller he made. But in 5 years' time of his farming there, he'd but hardly a penny he could call his own. Every mek that he got from the crops of one year seemed to cry to go back to the crops of the next. My mother, that was tall and dark and so quiet, came to look at him queer as he came in by.
Rob, I've still got that queer pain in my breast. I've had it a long time. I doubt it's getting worse. I'll need to send for the doctor, I think.
Aye. Well, that's fine. I'll need to be stepping.
This, sir?
Aye, I'll need to put in a 2-3 hours tonight when the weeds coming up so thick in the Swedes.
Oh, Rob, would you leave your part for just a minute and consider me?
Well, it's fair pestered with dirt, that poor bit back.
Rob, I'm ill. And I want a doctor at last.
Late the next afternoon, he set off, and the light came low and the hours went by. Mother saw nothing of him or the doctor, and near went daft with worry and pain.
Rob, is that you?
Aye.
Kept you so long?
Is that? I've up at my work. I came back and saw my Swedes waiting the horse, so I got off my bike and held into the hoy.
But the doctor.
Oh, aye, he'll be here in the morning.
Rob, you might have come up and told me.
Now, what sense would there be in my wasting my time to come up here and tell you that? I need you up at the house with me. What for? I've got no time to waste.
Get in, man. Well, Galt, I feared I have bad news. Your wife has cancer in the breast, I think.
She'd to take to her bed and was there a good month while Father worked the patolls on his own. Syne she wrote a letter to me to where I was feed in Saget, and I came home. Mother, you mean to say, has he never looked near you?
No, lass, he hasn't.
Oh, I'll get the police on the beast for this.
Oh, it's no use, Rachel. All he thinks of is his coarse bit more. Feeding it, harrowing it. He's cross-ploughed it twice, thrice. He coddles it as though it was his own blood and bone.
I know. It's a joke in Saget that he'd take it to bed with him if he could.
For all I see of your own father and mine, he might as well do that. Rachel. I can scarce believe he's still the same Rob. And once, when blushed call me his jewel. Many's the time said all he wanted on earth was a wife like he had. Land of his own.
But that was afore he got the land. I could see him scything about and hear the skirl of the stone as he'd whet the blade. The sun is still low on the drowsing howe. The dying woman in the littered bed. You might well be ashamed of yourself. You've nearly killed Mother with neglect.
Hoots, lassie, your stomach's gone sour with the heat. Could I leave my parks to get covered with weeds?
Your parks? Are you just a beast with no heart at all?
I must get on with coaling the hay.
Father.
What?
Are you not going to look in on Mother?
Well, lass, you'll be pleased to hear the hay's done fine. Damn it, there's a cloud coming up for the sea.
He just doesn't think, Rachel. It's not that he's cruel. He's just mad and patolls.
Mother was dead ere September's end. On the day of the funeral, as folk came up, they met Rob Galt in his old cord breeks with a hoe in his hand. And he said he'd been out loosening up the potato drills a bit.
that?
It's lime I should have given the yavel.
The yarble?
Aye, lime. They're greeting out for it, that park on the brae. What's wrong with you, lass, that you're gloating like that?
I was just remembering, Mother.
I've made up my mind to break in another bit stretch of the moor.
Beyond what you've already broken.
Aye. You know where the land rises steep and a durna braes.
You'd be fair daft to break that. It's lain wild and unfenced since the flood.
Aye, maybe. But they're queer like those braes. As if some chiel had shored them up tight.
Why don't you rest, Father?
What rest? I'm meals my new bit park.
Every night you come in sweating like a bull.
Oh, what else would I do but get on with my work?
And yet, hard as I tried, I just couldn't hate him. There was something in him that tugged at me. A feeling with him that the fields mattered and mattered. Nothing else at all. And then, as that next day wore to its close, I heard him crying my name out by, and he waved to me from the moor. So I went up by the track through the schlorach of the wet November moor, a windy day in the winter's neve, the hills a cower from the bite of the wind. The winds in that wind had a moan as they moved.
This isn't a day for a dog to be out. You're near turned to the skin.
Come in, by and look fairly, lass.
What is it?
I heaved a root up from its hold. Look.
It's a yard, an earth house of olden time, built by the early folk.
Aye, it is. And he was more than that. Look at this hue. One scythe bedalled. Oh, I knew that some chiel had farmed up here. Oh, lass, I'd like to have kent that chiel. What a crack the gither we'd have had on the crops.
That night he started to splutter and hoast. Next morning was over stiff to move, fair clean amazed at his own condition. He said hardly a word the last hour as he lay and looked out at that park, red-white, with a tremor of its earthen face as the evening glow came over the howe.
Rachel, you'll take on the land.
nothing in that.
Father worked all his go into the ground. There was nothing left to fight the black host that took hold of his lungs.
Well, it was no more than a cold.
Likely he caught it up there, while he stood and looked at the hole and the bones in the old-time grave. I plan to have him buried up there by the bones of the old-time man.
Have you thought of what the minister will say?
No. Father, he asked me if I would take on the land just before he died. But I couldn't lie, even to please him just then.
Oh, well. Will you be staying here alone all night with his corpse?
Oh, yes.
As you wish, Rachel.
I went up through the parks, quiet, in the wet, quiet gloamings coming, up through the hill to the old earth house. All life, just clay that awoke and strove to return again to its mother's breast. And I thought of the men who had made these rigs, and the windy days of their toil and years. The daftness of toil that had been Rob Galt's, that had been that of many men long on the land, though seldom seen now. Was it good? Was it bad? What power had that been that woke once on this brae and was gone at last from the parks of Petolds? For I knew in that moment that no other would come to tend the ill rigs in the north wind's blow. This was finished and ended, a thing put by, and the winds and the broom creep down once again, and only the peasies weep and be still when I'd gone to the life that was mine, that was different. And the earth turned sleeping, unquieted no longer, her hungry bairns in her hungry breast, where sleep and death and earth were one.
She had 9 of a family in her time, Mistress Mingus, and brought the 9 of them up forby, some neared by the scruff of the neck, he would say. And if ever a soul had seen her at rest when the dark was done and the day was come, he'd died of the shock and never let on. Day blinked, and Meg did the same, and was out of her bed and about the house, making the porridge and roasting the bairns, and out to the byre to milk her 3 kye, the morning growing out in the east. But syne back to the kitchen she would be and catch Jock, her eldest, a clearing the lug that he hadn't roused up his sisters and brothers, and rouse them herself, and feed them and scold, pull up their breeks and straighten their frocks, and polish their shoes, and set their caps straight.
Off you go then. See you're nae late. And see and behave yourselves at the school. And tell the Dominie I'll be down the night to ask him what the mischief he meant by leather and Jeannie and her nae wheel. On you go then. Mother.
I'm having trouble with the Dominie again, Mrs. Mingus, eh?
Teachers are course to my Jeannie, Mr. Webster. Guy course.
Oh, you were saying.
Thanks.
Who's well this morning?
Oh, fair tired, Mr. Webster. Fair tired. Come on, Nan, Willie. Time you was up.
Oh, just.
Aye. You've got the live field fence to fix.
He was drinking himself into the grave, folks said. As coarse a little brute as you'd meet, bone lazy for buy and as sly as sin. Rampageous and ill with her tongue though she was, I couldn't but pity a woman like Meg, tied up for life to a thing like that. I couldn't but think as I saw that steer, it was as well there was a thing like marriage. Folk held together and couldn't get apart. Else a black lookout it well would be for the fusionless creature of Tocherty Toon.
I'm fair dashed with my work, Meg. I mended all the life ends this day. No, I'll have to go back to my bed.
It's the best thing, Willie. With maybe a wee nip to keep off the chill, eh?
Aye.
She did half his work in the Tocherty parks, on that ill-bit croft that sloped to the sea. When there wasn't a mist on the stone-cold parks, there was more than likely the wheep of rain, wheeling and dripping in from the sea that soaked and splashed by the land's stiff edge.
Oh, man, come on! Oh, man, oh.
She'd yoke up the horse and shoulder together, and kilt up her skirts till you'd see her great legs, and cry whoosh like a man.
Right, come on, up, man!
Well, he drank himself to his grave at last. Less smell on the earth, there may be more in it. But she broke down and wept. It was awful to see Meg Mingus weeping like a stricken horse, her eyes on the dead, quiet face of her man. And she ran from the house. She was gone all night, though the bairns cried her name up and down the parks in the sound of the sea.
Mother, where are you?
Say when, Mr. Murdoch?
I'm fine when you put away your man.
But next morning they found her back in their midst, brisk as ever like a great boned mare, ordering here and directing there, and a fine feed set the next day for the folk that came to the funeral of her man. She'd 4 of the bairns at home when he died. The rest were in kitchen service or feed. She'd seen to the settling of the quines herself, and twice, when 2 of them had come home complaining like of their mistress's ways, she'd thrashen the quines and ta'en them back.
You're going back, I'm warning you. I've scalped the lassie and brought you back. But don't you ill-use her, or I'll scalp you as well.
Faith, that must have been a sair shock to the bed doctor's wife.
It's fair to speak of the place, Meg Mingus, and the vulgar words she used. Folk tell that she even said what was the place where she'd scalp her.
My. And the doctor's wife said genteel. She'd never believe she has a place like that. Her man knew dead, Meg wouldn't hear of leaving Tocherty Toon. It was harvest then, and she drove the reaper up and down the long, clanging clay rigs by the sea. She led the stooks with her bairns to help. You'd see them at night, a drowsing cluster under the moon on the harvest cart. And through that year and into the next, Meg Mingus worked the Tokety tune, and faith, her crops came none so ill. Then what got about of our eldest son, Jock Mingus, that was feed up Allardyce way? The creature of a loon had had a fair conceit since he won a prize at a ploughing match, not for his ploughing, but for his good looks. And the queens about were as daft as himself. He'd only to nod and they'd come to heel. And stories told that they'd come further than that. Well, Meg heard the stories and paid no heed till the last one came. She was fell quick then. Soon as she heard it, she hove out the old bit bike that her daughter Cathy had bought for herself and got on the thing and went cycling away down through the Bervie Braes in that spring. The sun was out and the land lay green with a blink of mist that was blue on the hills.
Aye, Mother. Your looks win prizes, your ploughing never well.
Fegs on, I'll not greet for that. Up, Charlie.
Just bide a minute, my lad.
Oh, boy.
What's this I hear about you and our Grant?
Ah, Grant? Aye, I do know her, but I don't know what you've heard.
I've heard you've known her our wheel more ways than one. It's an answer I want, near cockerel's cackle. I can hear that main dunghill. What's this I hear about you and our Grant?
Nothing. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Faith, mistress, you'll have his lug off.
Keep off. That'll have yours off as well. Well, what are you to do about our agony plater?
Oh, let go. I'll put things right where I swear I will.
See that you do, and get married right quick. You're the like that needs loaded with a bairn of bairns to keep you out of jail. It needs Smeddum to be either right course or right kind.
They were wed before the month was well out, and she herself led the wedding dance, the minister in her arms, a small bit chiel. 'Twas then as she whirled the minister about the room, he looked like a rat in the teeth of a tyke, that he thanked her for seeing ag out of her sauce.
Oh, aye, maybe so. I've found them a quarter house to settle, and I've given them a bed and a press ahead and 2-3 sticks for the Tofferty.
Oh, splendid, splendid. There's nothing like a marriage for redding things up.
Eh?
I said there's nothing like a marriage for redding things up.
Oh, aye, aye.
What's happened, Mother? I saw a policeman.
It's your sister Jeannie's led trouble for the door. She's been found stealing money.
At the doctor's place.
Aye. News of the thing got out and the police have been up and tormented her sore.
I never stole a make, Mother. I swear I never.
Oh, aye, and I'll swear with you. Fegs, there's some lachrecht hearty at this. But a smack in the eye for Michael Meg Mingus. A doctor, a thief.
Morning, Mrs. Mingus. I've come for Ginny.
Oh, aye, if you so then. And why, may I spear?
That money we missed that we thought she'd taken, it's been found at last.
Oh, Was it now?
Aye, in a press by the door. Somebody or other had left it. You know, to pay the grocer and such at the door. And, I've come to take Ginny back.
Oh, have you now?
It was all a mistake, Mrs. Mingus.
Aye, well, then, you've just made another mistake.
You're making a miserable error, Mrs. Mingus.
I'll make you mincemeat in a minute. Have you any cigarettes?
No.
Then I stand there and lie away and bring them to me. I guess I don't much left the thing. Maybe smoke will do good for the crow I got in my throat last night.
By the doctor's house?
By the doctor's house.
Well, in less than a month, she'd get rid of Jean. Packed off to Brechin, the Quine was, and soon got married to a creature there. Some clerk that would have left her sore in the lurch, but that Meg went down to the place on her bike. And there, so the story went, she kicked the chiel so hard that he couldn't sit down for a fortnight near. No doubt that was just a bit lie that they told, but faith, Meg Mingus had herself to blame, the reputation she'd gotten in the How. Kathleen was next to leave home at the term. She'd grown tall like Meg, and with red hair as well. Brown eyes and a mouth with lips she thought over thick.
Ah, well, I'm off then, Mother.
See you behave yourself.
Maybe. I'm not at the school now.
Meg stood and stared at the slip of a quine. You'd have thought her half angry, half near to laughing, as she watched that figure so slender and trig with its shoulders square set slide down the hill on the wheeling bike. Swallows were dipping and flying by Kinneff. She looked light and free as a swallow herself, the quine, as she biked away from her home. Jim'll be the next to leave school, I suppose.
Ah, but he'll bide at home. He's a quiet little loon.
Aye, you'll be able to take a bit of rest when you get Jim to work the talkative for you. Aye. It tells in all of us.
It does.
Age, mistress, age.
Damn the age. But I've finished with the trackle of the bairns at last. Most of them married, they're still our young.
Oh, well, I wasn't hinting that you
I'm
were.
still swag as ever I was, my lad. Just get the notion to be a bit sweeter.
And wonder of wonders, Meg took a rest. Well, she'd hardly begun on that notion when, faith, all the news that came up to the place from Seggett. Kathleen, her quine that was feed down there, she'd been up with some coarse old chiel in a bank. He'd left his wife. They were off together.
And her but a bare 16 years old.
And that proved the truth of what folk were saying. Meg Mingus, she hardly paid heed to the news, just gave a bit laugh like a neighing horse, and went on with the work of park and byre cool as you please. Aye, getting fell old. No more was heard of the quine or the man till 2 years and more had passed, and then word came up to the Tocherties someone had seen her. And where do you think?
John Robb.
Aye.
Well, don't look at me so canny. I'm not looking for a tip. Do you not know me then, you gowk?
No.
I'm Cathy Mingus that you knew long syne.
Cathy Mingus? Not her that
Aye, it was me that ran off with the banker from Second.
Kathy Mingus! And what are you doing on this bit boat?
I'm working as a stewardess. Yourself?
Oh, I emigrated to my uncle's farm in Australia. Fell near starved to death down there.
It's a pity we didn't meet in with each other sooner. We're guy close to Southampton.
Aye, 'tis a pity. Kathy, you're the bonniest thing I've seen all the weary weeks I've been away from home.
Well, I'll need to be going. We're serving up dinner to the first-class folk. They're aye dirt that are ready to eat and drink.
It was nice seeing you, Kathy.
And you, John. If you ever get near to Tochety Toon, tell Meg I'll get home and see her sometime.
Aye.
Ta-ta.
I was fair dumbfounded at meeting her. I would have spoke some more, but well, we didn't have time. Anyway, Kath said to tell you she'd see you sometime.
She's still a coarse bitch. I've not a doubt.
That's only too true.
Well, if she never comes back to the Mearns, and say that you cannot but redden with shame when a body will ask, was Kath Mingus your sister?
Oh, a sore thing it is for decent bit folks that we should have any relations like her.
He left them short and went raging home. Folk thought that maybe the last they would hear of young Kath Mingus and her ill-getted ways. So fair stammy-gasted they were with the news she'd come back to the Mearns.
I never thought to see her back again. I'm surprised at you, Mr. Webster, allowing that ill quine in the shop.
Kathy, she works fine. What else she does is no business of mine.
It just shows you the way the world's going. It's fair a scandal, her serving decent women who are properly wed.
Aye, women like us that have never looked on any man but our own. And only then with our braces buttoned.
Somebody should speak to Mr. Webster.
Oh, I did. The creature just said it was none of his business.
You may well guess there's more than business between her and him, like.
Oh, I fair took a fancy to you, Kathy, when I saw you on the boat. Oh, and you boiled up when I heard your brother speak of you like that. Him that married the wife out of shame.
Oh, Jock. I'm told he's fair changed with marriage.
Oh, I rents a fell big farm. It's well stocked. He feeds 2 men. He's grown as mean as dirt. And thin, like your father. Only worse, the both each say. Your father could at least take a bit dram and get lost to the world, but, well, Jock's that mean he might drink rat poison and take no harm.
But would feel at home in a stomach like his.
Well, I, for one, wished that you'd come back, Kathy. That day when I cycled home, I felt a wild, daft unease. As though something was missing. Lost from the world. You were the thing that I missed, Kathy. There was something in you that minded a man of a house that was builded on a hill.
Mercy me. Look, it's Meg Mees. She's heard the news. Like what she did to her other bit bairns that went wrong.
Aye, Wheel on. It's you.
Aye, Mother. Just that.
2 pounds of syrup, and see that it's good.
a word passed between them. Meg Mingus, her that once would attain such a quine and skelter to right afore you could wink.
John Rob? What's this I hear about you and Kath Mingus?
I've no idea. Though I hope it's the worst.
Fell near is.
And I wish it was true.
Do you know?
Aye. She might marry me then, as I've prigged her to do.
Have you so then?
Dear Mother, John Rob's gone out to Canada and wants me to marry him and go with him. I've told him instead, I'll go with him and see what he's like as a man. And then marry him at leisure, if I feel in the mood. But he's hardly any money and we want to borrow some. So he and I are coming over on Sunday. I hope that you'll have dumpling for tea. Your own daughter, Kath.
So she's going off with him.
I know. You're rather house-hard. What are you going to do now, Mother?
There was a promise of strange goings-on at Tocherty by the time that Sabbath day was come. For Jock came there on a visit as well, him and his wife. And besides him was Jeanie, her that had married the clerk down in Brechin. And she brought the creature. He was fair at off, and he stepped like a cart through the sharn and the close.
I'll go with him and see what he's like as a man, and then marry him at leisure if I feel in the mood. No. Aye, but there's more. But he's hardly any money, and we want to borrow some.
Course, Quine. Aye, course to the bone. I'll get it, I'd say. If it wasn't it, we came with the same bit stock. Ah, well. She'll fare off to tramp to Canada. Eh, Mother? Ah, well, if she's needing money for you.
No, I wouldn't say that. Have the money all ready for them when they come.
What? Give Scylla to one who does as she likes, and who won't marry, as who made the rest of us marry. Give Scylla to one who's no more than a whore.
Aye, just that. You see, she takes after myself. Oh, well, she's fit to be free and make her own choice, same's myself, the same kind of choice. There's none of the rest of you fit to do that. You to marry or burn, so I married you quick. But Kath and me could afford to find out. It all depends if you've Smeddum or not. I never married your father, you see. Never make up my mind if it will. Maybe our Kath will find something purer. Here's Hannah man coming up the road.
Folk laughed when they heard of the creatures coming to set them down in the farm of Greenden that lay west of the Tullach by Berby Water. It was a 40-50 acre place, the den, wet in the bottom as well it might be, so low it lay there in its woods. In the midst stood the biggings. They were old and right dark. From the kitchen door you looked round and up at a jungle near lowest from the world. So close around and between the trees, the broom plants grew in the wind. But when night came, sometimes over the trees and the rank wild waste of moor, you'd see through a narrow pass in the woods the last of the sun as it kindled a light in the grampians and went off to its bed. And that light in the mark was near as much as a man would see of the world out by from the kitchen door of Greenden. Well, come at last, the Simpsons did to Greenden. I had no rounds that day, and I hired out a cart to George Simpson for the carting down of his stuff.
As long as Mr. Webster, they're guy bad.
When we were loading, I noticed you puffed and pecked a lot.
They're guy bad. I've come out for the country, for my lungs. When they took bad, it was plain I wouldn't last a long while at the Clarkin. The doctor said I should leave the town.
Oh, we'll find it a fair change for the Glasgow streets down in Greenden.
Aye, I suppose so. Mind you, I had little fancy to leave. My wife had even less. She's town bred and feared of the country, Ellen. So had I thought.
It was late at night when we came down to the den. Down through the thick woods, larch it was, so close the trunks that the night was dark, though the light shone still out on the high road that walked by the sea.
Oh, you've been long.
Well, what?
I thought I'd have to spend the night down here, all alone by myself, in Greenden.
Well, mistress, you'd have taken a while.
I know that fine. And of course the country's lovely to live in.
She smiled at me like a daft like quine. I couldn't make head nor tail of her yet, the laugh, and that quiver she had in her laugh. Syne I loosed and helped him in with her gear. Great clutter of stuff they'd brought up from Glasgow. George Simpson, he puffed and pecked right sore big though he was, with a big sappy face, and a look on that face as though some child had taken him a right heart kick in the dope. Thanks, Mrs. Simpson. Aye, old Grant farmed Greenden till he died. Soon as he'd been taken, the old mistress moved her into Drumlithy and took a bit cottage and lived in his cellar. She said it's fine to be there and with so-and-so folk.
Still, you miss her man.
Folk thought so at first. See, the minister came, the free Kirkloon. And he snuffled recht godly and said through his nose, "You'll meet him above, mistress." But at that, she gave a kind of start. Near dropped her teapot, she did, when he spoke. Well, then, she asked, "Aye, fegs," she, I confess, I hadn't reckoned that. Still, Grant was a steady old stock.
Fair strong in the hands and weak in the head, so I've had.
Some said so. That was the speak of murder up at the mains. You've met your neighbour?
He drove us round the district when we came up to look at the place.
Murder can lie like a tink when the mood's on him. Though he may have been right about old Grant. Aye, he may have been right about old Grant, for a body hardly ever made out what he said. He would whisper and whisper, whispering even as he gurned his horse in the light of the woods that watched Greenden.
They tell me the Gordon Quine's getting a bit stupid.
Sure. 7, 8, 9.
Folk are beginning to wonder why.
I dare say 10, 11, 12 dozen.
Tell me,
1, 2,
is it true
3,
that Wallace
4.
is as cursed his wife as folks say?
I've no idea, Mistress Murdoch. 5, 6, 7. Damned if I know or care.
Hi, Mister. I see the new folk have settled down in Greenden. Him and his little bit snippet of a wife.
Ellen's her name.
Oh, what's she like then?
When I saw her, I half thought she was Simpson's daughter. No wife she looked. She's thin and slim, bonny in a way, and her eyes are kind. Of course, he's no farming body, but a creature for the town. Glasgow it was.
They don't know what it is to work, the dirt that comes from town.
Maybe not. Certainly he's never handled a plough or a grape in his life.
You'll stick in it.
Mistress Murdoch went down to tea at Greenden, but she couldn't abide George Simpson's mistress. The creature fair got on her nerves with her tripping here and her tripping there, and the meckle eyes of her and the small doll face that she had.
It's Simpson I pity, poor man. With lungs like his and a wife like that. Little comfort by day and less in his bed. I'd rather sleep with a fluff of a feather than depend on that on a cold rough night.
Oh, boy. Oh, it's still there. Oh. She looked light enough for a puff of wind to blow her from the kitchen door at night when she opened that door to come out as I drove my van down for her orders on Friday. Losh, mistress, you're not in Glasgow now, you know. You'll fair need to keep yourself wrapped up.
I'm fine. Listen to the trees.
The woods are just as I'd have been. Why should we stand still and listen? Mr. Simpson?
Oh, nothing. Sorry, but I can't but listen.
Well, maybe she knew what she meant. I didn't. I sold her her orders, she fair had a lot, and drove away up through the dark. And as I was driving, I heard the hoisting and hacking out there by the barn, and I thought of the Simpson chill in his lungs. It wasn't likely he would store the kiln. Ellen Simpson, kind enough I suppose the creature was, but somehow she'd set me at unease, and I wondered what ailed me. Going up through the dark, I was filled with fancies daft as a carrying woman, as though the trees moved and the broom was whispering and some beast with quiet breath came padding on my tracks. And I heaved a great breath outside of the den, up in the light of the evening sun, though the den below was in shadow. Wet it was that spring. March came flooding in rains down the length and breadth of the guttering How. Every night you'd hear that swash of the water if your place in the bed was next to the wall. Down in Greenden it was worse than most, and Simpson with his host, poor Cheel, might well have kept in bed in blankets. But folks said his creature of a wife wouldn't hear of that, laughing at him, affronting him into a rage.
Come on now, George, the day's half dead. And it's fine. A good day for the plough.
So out you to get, and out with his pair, and go slow stepping up and down the lay hawks that line the deep den.
His drills go this way and that. Damn, they've little sense in tones. His ploughing's a fair sight for sore eyes. Of a Sunday, the bothy billies go over and take a danner down the den, just to stand and look at his drills and laugh.
Aye, and sign that here Mr. Simpson crying to her hens and see her like a snippet of a doll flit over the close in some errand or other. The poor Simpson Cheel kept his bed in the Sundays. Time wore on, and Murdoch of the Mains hadn't set eyes on Simpson for near a month, and fair got a shock when he saw how he had grown thicker and bigger. His face filled out.
Your parks are as well forward as any other place.
Aye, well, I've been kept with my nose to the ground. I think I go back to my bed with a back like to break. Ellen just laughs. She doesn't know what illness is. And I'm not the man to fear her and tell her.
Oh, I saw fine how the thing was going. Simpson Shields working himself to his grave.
And with his coarse lungs, too. Just to please his coarse wife.
Aye. There's nothing I can do in the matter, I thought. Except to say I'd be pleased to see him here at the Mains.
That was right. That as well.
No, I said nothing about his bit wife. There's damn little pleasure to be had in the creature.
Oh, she fear gets nobody's nerves with her laughing, her listening, and the flutter of her eyes.
George, do you think your lungs are near better?
Just luck, said some. She hadn't his death on her hands. And you couldn't blame him that he fell in the way nearly every bit evening he would do it now, of taking away over the brae from the den to the Mains. What with heat and with rain, the den was green lush right early that year. I thought it came thicker than ever I minded. Hi, man. 16, 18, 20, 22, 2 dozen. Oh, but it's still.
Yes, it's still.
Thinner she'd grown, more a wisp than ever, but still with her smile. And I liked her fine, near the only soul in the district that did. And the two of us stood there and listened in that quiet. Not a sound to be heard or a thing to be seen beyond the green cup that stood listening around.
I stand here these nights while the light draws in and the dark comes close, and look up and away out over the trees.
At what, mistress? I can see faint a thing.
Look harder.
And then I saw where the swathe of the trees and the broom was broken. And through the hollow that was left, and the gloaming the sun struck light on the Grampian slopes. Long miles away and across the Mearns, shining immediate, yet distant and blue, their green earth hazed in the heather bells. And that was the thing that she stood and watched, as a dafty would.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'd forgotten you were here. Was it George you wanted to see?
Well, that was in June, and the June end came as bonny as ever it came in the How. George Simpson made out of it every bit night over to the Mains new barn that were building. He'd pretend it was the barn he went to see, but he'd edge away from it as soon as he might, take round to the kitchen, and Jeannie would blush.
Step away in, Mr. Simpson. And how are you?
Well enough, Jeannie.
Still, I'm sure you're tired.
Aye. Oh, I'll confess, I'm better than I've been. All the more reason why I want some cheer when I come in about my own fire at night. Not to be listening to somebody crying, "Oh, George, do you think your lungs are near better?"
No, I'm sure. Sit you down and I'll make you a fine cup of tea.
You're as fine as your bonny, Jean lass.
Folk are beginning to talk about their flirting and fleering.
There speaks no more than fun, there's no harm in it. Simpson's a fine bit chiel. He's a bit dour, but he's a fine chiel.
Still, at times I think Jeannie goes over far with a man that's married.
Well, the poor stock's no doubt in need of a laugh. He'd be as fine a good son as you'd meet. If it wasn't for that snippet of a creature, Alan.
Oh, her. She fair gets my hackles on edge with her fluttering.
I was asking Alec Webster how she was.
Him? You don't get much news out of him when you speak to him at the tail of his van. He never tells a story in a neighbour like we.
The doctor said I was fit for the knacker's yard if I didn't leave the town. Well, I had a little fancy for that. I thought Ellen had less. Then one Sunday, we went to the kirk, and she heard them sing one of them hymns, and it fair seemed to change her mind.
A hymn, you say?
Aye. The one that begins with the words, "There is a green hill far away."
Oh, I ken it. There is a green hill far away without a city wall, where our dear Lord was crucified, who died to save us all. Aye, I ken it fine.
Aye, that's the one. So when we got back to our house, Ellen kept whispering and remembering the tune. And suddenly, she said, we must leave the town. We must find a farm where I could work out in the open to mend my ill lungs.
What did you say to that?
I'd hardly hear of the thing at first. I thought working a farm would kill me.
It's a wonder it didn't, with a coarse ploughing of that old red clay.
Oh. Ellen had set her mind on the plan, so I set about looking for a place to please her.
Aye. But you should have looked for a place in the south.
I'd but little cellar to stock up a steading. And land in the south was far over dear. But up here in the Mearns, I came on Greenden, and its rent was just inside the reach of my pouch. So I brought Ellen up to see it. She stared down in the hollow. She seemed half taken aback.
I'm not surprised.
And then she said we must take it. And take it we did.
And here you are now.
Oh, aye. She likes it fine.
And fine well she might, the cuss creature.
No, Jeannie, no.
It's no her that has to face up the reins of the Pleiter and Soswa farm.
Aye, well. But you were surely a fool, man, to let yourself be taken from a fine town job just to pleasure your wife.
Or the fancy she'd gotten from hearing a hymn in a kirk.
Ah, that's true. Folk with sense know that hymns are just things you sing. Doos.
Aye. Then you forget the damn things.
That summer wore on, and in the den the trees were a wall, green blinding the place. I'd driven down late, as I had done, when I met Ellen Simpson come running up the road.
Here, hot boy, hot. Over. Good, mistress. What's doing ye? What's wrong?
The trees. The trees. Don't leave me. Don't leave me. I'm frightened.
There, now, Mistress Simpson. What is it?
My hill. They've done something to my hill. They've taken it away.
What?
Oh, I can't stand it now. I can't. I can't.
I thought in a flash of old Grant of Greenden. He also had whispered and whispered like that. Then I saw that there rose through that howe in the woods, through which had once seen the light gleam on the hills, the roof and girders of Murdoch's new barn. I stared at the thing, and then stared at the woman. And at that she broke down and cried like a bairn. She'd no shame before me. She surely was daft.
Oh, I can't stand it longer in this hateful place. It's smothering and killing me down, lost here. I've been frightened. So frightened since the first hour here.
Wheesht, mistress. Go in and lie down.
I've tried not to show it, and I know that it's nothing, but the trees, they hate me. Oh, I can't stand it any longer, not even for George. Now that they've blocked up the sight of the hill that was mine. leave me. Don't leave me, I'm frightened. The trees on the broom. Keep off the trees. It's growing so dark. I can't see it. The hill.
Gwen and I doing, Mr. Simpson? There now.
George. He's safe now. He's safe. God died. But I needn't. He saved him. Not I.
But at last she grew quiet and went ben from the kitchen. I stood and thought, and then I minded her man might be at the mains.
Oh, it's yourself, Alec. If it's Mrs. Murdoch you're looking for, she's off to the pictures at Bervie.
Leave your courting until you're a widower.
What's that?
Have you nae shame of her to abandon your wife night after night doing that hell of a den?
You bugger. Talk to me like that.
Away. You raise your hand to me, you big well-fed bullock. I'll crack your jaw where you stand.
Highest, what's wrong?
His wife, that's what's wrong. She's gone gay queer.
Ellen!
Now, are you gone home or are you not?
Aye.
Where our dear Lord was crucified, who died to save us all.
The house is dark.
Here, Webster.
Take her down, man. I'll go and get a doctor. But I knew right well that that would help nothing. And the thought went with me as I drove through the woods, up out of the den, to the road that walked by the sea. And the green hills that stood to peer with quiet faces in the blow of the wind from the sunset's place.